Good morning once again, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to our monthly webinar here from Alzheimer's Orange County. Today's topic is caring communication strategies in dementia care. And my name is Melissa Klabe. I'm the Director of Education here at Alzheimer's Orange County, and I'll be your host today, as well as kind of a little bit of a co-presenter with our main presenter today, who I'll introduce shortly. Our complimentary webinars are brought to you through a collaboration of sponsorship with Irvine Clinical Research, O'Connor Mortuary, Care Choices Hospice and Palliative Services, Caring Companions at Home, and of course, us here at Alzheimer's Orange County. And our sponsors provide these webinars to you as a service to the community on topics beneficial for anyone who cares for or works with older adults. And of course, as always, we hope you find today's presentation useful and informative. And today our presenter is going to be Kim Bailey, whom I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Kim Bailey is a gerontologist. She's worked in the field as a lecturer and healthcare professional for over 30 years. She is our program and education specialist here at Alzheimer's Orange County. She coordinates our early memory loss program, our Connect to Culture programs, and of course provides tons of other educational instruction for families, clinical staff, and the community at large. She's a former adjunct faculty professor. Ms. Bailey taught at California State University Fullerton and Vanguard University. She's also served as a corporate gerontologist for the Hartford Insurance Group, Director of Community Relations and Development for the UCI Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, which is, of course, UCI Mind. She was a consultant for Alzheimer's Care Associates and principal for Care Management for Older Adults, LLC. Ms. Bailey is dedicated to serving the needs of our older adult community and passionate about assisting individuals and families affected by memory loss. She holds a Master's of Science degree in gerontology and a BA in sociology with a minor in human services, both from CSU Fullerton. And it is my great pleasure to now be joined by Kim Bailey. Good morning, Kim.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I'm really excited to have Melissa stay with us as well and co-present with me today. We've got a great topic. It's kind of funny because I pushed back a little bit with Laura Bronson on this topic because I felt like it's something that we presented in the past, and maybe for some of our longtime professionals, it's something they already know about. But Laura reminded me that we have a lot of new people who are joining us every month. And in addition to that, it's something that constantly needs to be reviewed, even for our folks that have been in the industry for a long time, and even people who are family caregivers, because it is such a foundational topic. And I really feel strongly that in order to provide excellent dementia care, to know how to work with challenging behavior expressions, to know how to plan and structure activities, to know how to provide great personal care. All of those things can't happen unless you really become well versed in making a great connection with people and communicating well with them. So even if you've been at this for a long time, I think we can all benefit from a refresher. So I'm just super pleased to be here today, and I'm very happy to have Melissa sort of at my side virtually anyway, so to speak. So our goals today, and we really do have a lot of ground to cover, are to just talk about, some really simple, tried and true principles and practical techniques in communication, and to develop an understanding of how, if we use these tools and if we have effective communication and we're flexible, it can lead to the reduction, maybe even the prevention of challenging behaviors. And so that's a pretty big statement when you think about it. So I'll say it again. The adoption of effective communication tools and flexibility can lead to the reduction, maybe even the prevention of some of the challenging behavioral expressions that we see in these illnesses. So that's sort of my promise to you in our discussion today. And then finally, we're going to, well, let me just say that if we were in person, we would make you practice some of these skills today. But instead, Melissa and I are going to demonstrate some of these skills that, again, will, undoubtedly enhance the quality of your day-to-day life with the person whom you're caring for at home, or for you professionals, your residents or clients in the professional settings. So that's our agenda for today. So let's go ahead and get started. And Melissa, can I ask you to kick us off with this quote from one of our very respected mentors in the field?
Absolutely. I would love to. We love Dr. Al Power. He's a very well-known and well-respected geriatrician in the dementia care space. And he says, the stigma of dementia challenges people's identity and subsequently our willingness and ability to connect with them in a meaningful way. I think stigma is a huge topic for dementia. I want to share another quote, if that's okay, briefly. This is a person with dementia who said, another crazy thing about Alzheimer's is nobody really wants to talk to you any longer. They're maybe afraid of us. I don't know if that's the trouble or not. I assume it is, but we can assure everybody that we know Alzheimer's is not catching. But it can often feel like that. Like once you have that diagnosis, you're immediately put into this other category. And we as a society and as families in a community, I think need to all be more educated and learn how to deal with that so that that stigma is reduced.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. So, let's think for a minute about how living with dementia challenges communication. So even from the earliest stage, there are broken connections. So changes in the brain mean that people are already starting to have difficulty with communicating. And that sort of looks like word finding deficits. It means that distractions are harder to tune out. So keep this in mind when you're trying to converse with someone who's living with dementia. Be very aware of, the television playing in the background, or traffic noises, or other people talking, interruptions, all of that. We're used to living in a very busy society with lots of noise all around us, but that's very troublesome for people with dementia. So, and then as Melissa just alluded to, stigma reinforces that divide. And so when you're talking to someone who's living with dementia, and you may be personally experiencing some difficulty with some of the words that they're saying or some of the expressions they're using, watch yourself, check your expression, and make sure that you don't have a look on your face like this, right? And be respectful at all times. And I think this quote, again, reinforces what Melissa was just saying. In my mind, one of the most important things you could do for me is make me feel comfortable in a group of, one of the things you could do to make me feel comfortable in a group of people is to include me. Do you want to comment on that, Melissa?
Yeah, sure. And I actually have the rest of this quote because it's a little bit longer. So in my mind, one of the most important things you could do for me to make me feel comfortable in a group of people is to include me. And he goes on to say, not so much by asking questions unless you're willing to help me answer them, which I would appreciate, but by including me in your smiles and your eye contact. And I think this is part of that stigma problem where oftentimes we have people talking maybe over the person or as if they're not there. Like you and I might, talk to each other, and I have a loved one with dementia in the room, and we're talking about them as if they're not there, and we think, oh, they maybe aren't picking up on what we're saying or that we're talking about them. But I think we discredit them when we do that. I think they know a lot more than we think. They're a lot more aware.
Right.
Typically our emotions can be, heightened. And so we need to be hyper aware that, we are including them if we are sitting at a table, dining with them, or doing personal care tasks. And I know we'll get into that, but I think that's just such an important point that can't be overstated.
Absolutely. And this reference here, Through the Wilderness of Alzheimer's, if I'm not mistaken, this is a book that was written by a gentleman living with the illness. He and his wife kind of tag teamed in the writing of this, and
Yeah.
yeah, so absolutely. I have to smile to myself because I'm remembering one of my clients was an artist, and he had shirts made up that said, "I have Alzheimer's. What's your excuse?" So, and that was really to address some of the stigma, because he got really tired of people talking over him and around him, and people without Alzheimer's make a lot of mistakes too. So, yeah. So we're talking here about our approach and our reaction, and we have to keep in mind when we're working with our clients and working with our loved ones that what we take for granted becomes difficult for them, because communicating and connecting are really complex interactions. And not only are our loved ones having difficulty expressing language, they're also having increasing difficulty interpreting what we're saying to them. And so we have to keep in mind at all times that we're the ones that have to change and we have to adjust, because they simply can't. What we sometimes do, and this is, I want to, before we kind of dive into this area, I want to always say to family members in particular that we're all guilty of these things. And so, especially for those of you who are newer to caregiving, please don't feel guilty if this resonates with you, because these are things that we do. It's human nature. But we sometimes reason with people. We argue or confront, we remind, we question recent memory, and we take things personally. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. But approaches that we should try instead that are really more effective is to repeat ourselves, because, and here I'm talking about when they question over and over again, rather than say, I just said that, or we just talked about that, we can just repeat ourselves. When they say, you didn't tell me that, for example, I might be talking to the person I'm caring for, and maybe I've told them 4 times in a row that we have a doctor appointment. They don't remember that. They can't help it. They might get angry and say, why didn't you tell me we are going to the doctors? Instead of, getting angry, I accept the blame and say, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that. If things get heated, rather than express that frustration, step back for a minute. Don't lose your cool. It's okay to just, maybe leave the room for a moment or two. Agree, go with the flow, and use redirection and distraction as a tool when people get stuck. So reasoning and arguing are things that are futile. Reminding them that they forget brings embarrassment, even humiliation. Questioning people brings frustration and is not dignified. And taking it personally really, is sort of pointless, because they're not doing things on purpose. They don't have the ability to do things deliberately. It's the disease that makes them say and do the things that they do. It's not them. So, Melissa, do you want to add anything here about the things that we sometimes do
Yeah,
as
I'll just
opposed to
say,
the things that we
yeah,
should try instead?
I'll say, and I say this a lot when I'm teaching classes, I reference this a lot. So I took a class, a couple years after my mom was diagnosed with, or kind of in the process of her being diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's disease. I knew nothing about the disease. It was before my time here. And I remember kind of getting this list and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything in the wrong column, like daily, and thinking, wow, this is okay. So I really need to change my approach. And it takes a while. And like you said, we shouldn't, don't don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel shame. Just, when we learn more, we are able to do better. We do the best we can until we know more. And so I think, just not being too hard on ourselves. We're human. We're used to interacting with this person the same way we always have for the time that we've known them. If it's a loved one, like that we've known our whole life. And so, just taking a step back and realizing, okay, their abilities are changing. I need to change as well to adapt to those changing abilities. And it can be a years-long process to practice these things. It's a daily practice. It's not a light switch that all of a sudden you're this perfect caregiver and now you know everything you need to know. So just do the best you can on a daily basis. That's what I would add there.
And I can tell a story on myself, and I've taught classes like this for many, many years, and then I became a personal caregiver. And Melissa and some of the others online with us today have heard this before, but it kind of encapsulates all the things on this page. But my person I was caring for got very angry with me one day at about 2 in the afternoon because she said that I hadn't fed her all day, and as a result, she was very hungry and felt very lightheaded, and why hadn't I fed her? And the very first thing I did was say, of course I've fed you. I would never not feed you. And then I went on this long list of foods. I told her what I made her for breakfast. I told her what I made her for her snack. I told her what I made her for lunch, and I sort of went on this long tirade. And in the middle of it, I remembered, all of these things that, I was reasoning with her. I was actually arguing with her. I was taking it personally because, of course, it got at the heart of, who I am as a person. I want to be a good caregiver. I want to take good care of her, and I was doing all of these things that you see on this list. And I just had to stop and laugh at myself because, of course, here I was, the person who was a professional and thought I was above, doing all these things, but we're all human. And so I really, it really is difficult. These lessons are difficult, and we teach these communication classes, and we often get people who come back and say, you know what, I need a refresher. I thought to myself, I need a refresher. So caregiving is hard, folks, but you keep these principles in mind, and sometimes we do it right, and sometimes we get it wrong, and we just keep trying, right? So again, try just, stepping back. We have another great educator in our ranks. Her name is Dr. Galindo, and she says, sometimes you just have to stop and do some deep breaths and just try again. And so another technique is looking for the meaning behind the words, because we just talked about the fact that they have difficulty expressing language, and they will also say things that don't always, they're puzzling to us. We don't always understand. They'll say things like, I want to go home, or I want to call, for example, my person who I cared for would want to call her husband who had passed away many years before. Sometimes they'll say, I want to pick up the kids. And you think to yourself, oh my gosh, the kids are in their 60s now, and she thinks they're supposed to pick, or she or he might think they're supposed to be picked up from school. There's all kinds of things that they'll say. And so it's incumbent upon us to search for the meaning behind those words. And so what might they be? What might the meaning be when they say something like, I want to go home? Well, we speculate that they want to go to a safe place. Maybe they're feeling threatened. Maybe they're feeling nostalgic. Maybe they want to go back in time to a time when they didn't have this illness, or just a place where they felt safe and secure. So, they may just be looking for reassurance, love. They may just need you to put your arms around them and tell them everything is okay. They don't, they definitely don't, this is not the time to book a ticket to their hometown. So, it's a psychological place as opposed to a physical place. And so they're looking for reassurance. Keep in mind that people with this illness all of the information in their brain is changing. I'll refer to Dr. Galindo again. She says something that's very, very compelling to me. She says the lights in their brain are starting to go out, sort of one by one. Imagine just how frightening and terrifying that is. And put yourself in their shoes. If they say they want to call their ex-husband, again, we're going to go back a couple slides or just one slide actually, where it says use distraction. Here's where you might try saying, oh, you're thinking about your husband. What a man he was, or what a man he is. You don't want to go into the past tense. I was just looking at these pictures of him. Should we look at some pictures together? Let's make some hot chocolate and look at photos. I'm not trying to make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's never easy caregiving, but there are these tools like redirection and distraction that we can use. Anything you do other than saying your husband's dead, you need to learn to live with it, it's going to be it's going to be much more effective. And again, like needing to pick up the kids, you look for the meaning behind the words. They're thinking about their family. There may be something you can say like, oh, school's not out yet. Why don't we make a sandwich while we wait? There are things that can be done that can be effective. And the I don't need your help is something that sounds like something I would say. I'm an independent woman. Here we kind of look at person-centered care, and when you know your residents or you know your family member, I'm going to probably be like that if I ever get dementia, because I've lived alone so many years and always taking care of myself. So that might be something where you could use a technique like, I understand you don't need my help, but you know what? I need your help. I have a job that I could use your help with. People living with this illness, sometimes they don't feel productive anymore. So sometimes we can redirect them into a task that takes their mind off, whatever negative feelings they might be having. Melissa, let me see what you have to say. Can you want to chime in with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I echo obviously everything that you've said. I think you made some important points about when we do hear these statements or statements like them, not just skipping over them and brushing them off and skipping straight to how can we distract this person away from wanting to go home or wanting to call so-and-so, because part of looking for the meaning behind the words is validating those very
Yes,
real emotions that that person is expressing. They want to go home. Like you said, maybe they are seeking comfort, or maybe they don't feel safe where they are for whatever reason. So if they're able to, asking a couple questions, well, tell me what you miss about your home, or what would you do if you were home right now? And maybe there's a clue in there that's something that you can make happen right where you are, right?
excellent.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tools available. Like you said, it's never easy when we're faced with these questions, especially if they're questions we get on a daily basis. But if you are experiencing this person saying something over and over and over again, the same statement, that should be a clue to you that there may be some unmet need in there that maybe we can do something about to reduce the incidence of this question being asked. Can we provide some sense of security and safety? Can we provide some comfort? If it's happening at the same time of day, is there an activity we can engage the person in that they really enjoy to take their focus off that maybe kind of typical sundowning time, or when they're asking to pick up the kids? I don't need your help is always a tough one, because obviously when we're trying to help, we love this person and we're trying to care for them, and that can be really, really hard to hear. I think, taking a step back, not taking it personally, apologizing. I think
Yes,
that's a big tool, even if it's not your fault. I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. I was trying to help.
right.
And seeing how we can give them some control, some autonomy back over their life, give more choices. Maybe they're feeling like their choices or their control are being taken away. So how can we address that, kind of bigger issue?
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot in here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for reminding us all that step one is validation. there's a reason for these feelings, as the slide indicates, and it's incumbent upon us to look for that meaning and to address it immediately and not skip over it, as you said. Thank you so much, Melissa. Yeah, and then, we're watching their non-verbal behavior, but we're also watching our own, right, Melissa? As we're
Absolutely.
communicating, I love this because this study is so old. There's no date on it, but I happen to know it. It dates back to the 70s when this professor out of UCLA was looking at the impact made in conversations, like what makes the most impact. And it turns out that only 7% of the success of our discussions really hinge on the words that we use. And so, you apply this to conversations with people with living with the disease. It's like the majority of your success hinges on your body language and your tone of voice, and not as important are the words. And so we teach what we call the compassionate approach, and it has to do with, making sure that you are not coming up from behind the person that you want to make your connection with, and that you're at eye level with them, and that you have their attention, and that you have nothing to hide, your open body language or body affect, all of that, tone of voice, the smile, speaking slowly and simply, all of those things are tremendously important in setting the stage for a successful interaction.
Absolutely. Kim, I think your webcam went away. I don't see you anymore, so maybe you can turn that back on if you are able to. There you are.
Where did I go?
I figured you'd be back.
I'm back. Did it go away again?
No, you're here. You're good.
Okay, good. It keeps disappearing from my screen, but I didn't realize I disappeared from everyone else's.
No problem.
So here's a few tips on how we can provide supportive communication. You know, at a point in the illness, for some people, of course, we've always said this, that every person living with dementia goes through the progression in their own way and in their own time, and that symptoms are variable. But, most people do have struggles with communication. And as they progress deeper into the illness, they do jumble their words, and it can be very difficult to understand what they're saying. And so if you're communicating with someone and listening to their conversation, maybe it doesn't always make a lot of sense to you, but you can sort of repeat some of their words back to them, even if you're not really clear on what they're saying. If you think about it, when you do that, we're talking about validation again. So when you do that, they're feeling heard. And when you're expressing statements to them, use just a few words and go slowly and really break down your sentences. And it says fill in the blanks here, but we want to do that sort of judiciously. And if the person is in the early stages, I would advise, and I'd be happy to hear what you think on this, Melissa, but I think it's wise to ask permission. You can ask, like, if you're a family caregiver, ask your spouse, do you want me to help you if you're struggling with a word? Some people are pretty touchy about that, or some people prefer that you help them. But do give people some space with that, and don't automatically fill in the blanks. But do you have any thoughts on that, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. It totally depends on the person. These are all suggestions. And with the same person, they might be cool with it one day, and the next day it's kind of, a little bit of a trigger. So I think the last bullet point is the way that I would go about it, aside from also asking, can I help you? But I love this kind of like, it sounds like what you're saying, or it looks like what you're trying to do or say is,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of a more gentle than, oh, you mean this, or, kind of barging in and just assuming what they're talking about. So I think it's all in the approach of how you do it. But
Yep.
it can be frustrating either way for somebody trying to find a word and they can't, or you're just constantly butting in with words.
Right.
So you really have to assess, read the room and assess the situation, and how the person's responding to that. And of course, hopefully, that person well, what, will help them in their communication.
Absolutely. And listen, offer empathy, and I would add, don't interrupt. And, really just slow down and give them time. You slow down when you're talking to them and give them time to process what you're saying, as their brain is working really hard to make this all work. And just remember, they look normal, but they're not. They have brain changes that are making all of this super difficult for them. Again, we're going to kind of look at what we tend to do just as, normal human beings, and then, side by side, a better approach. Instead of, do you remember when, we can say, this reminds me of that time when because you're giving them a little cue there. Instead of saying, what did you have for breakfast? It's better to say, did you enjoy your breakfast? Because here you're, instead of an open-ended question, you're asking a close-end question. So that makes it much easier for them. And instead of saying, what, that never happened, just go with the flow and say, that sounds interesting. Keep in mind that people with dementia will lie, and that lie is such a horrible word. We actually call it confabulate. That's the official term. And they're not doing it on purpose. They just see the world differently than we do. And so they'll say things that aren't true. And we just accept that and we just go with the flow. And guess what? We lie too. And that's such a horrible word. So let's call that therapeutic fibbing, okay? So we need to slow down. We breathe. Again, we're adjusting our body language. All the time, we're observing their body language and facial expression, and we're responding accordingly. When things get volatile, and they do, because people living with these illnesses have their emotions very close to the surface, we're going to constantly assess for safety. We're going to recognize where these emotions are coming from, look for triggers, and we're going to validate them. We're going to apologize, like Melissa and I have been saying. And if we need to, we're going to step back. And I love this. This is the anger iceberg. And I'm not going to get into all of this except to say that, it's pretty easy to read this. What you see is the tip of the iceberg. When they get angry, there's a lot brewing underneath the surface, and it's probably been bubbling around or bubbling up for a long time. There's just myriad emotions going on. They're probably embarrassed. They may be grieving. They're obviously feeling overwhelmed, stressed. All manner of things can be going on. And so we're only seeing what's on the surface. And we have to be aware that there's a lot going on beneath the surface with our loved ones and clients who are living with this illness. Okay, so Melissa, do you want to do this part, about the rough or the smooth road?
Sure.
Okay.
So we've done a presentation in the past called Rough Roads and Smooth Roads, kind of talking about communication and what makes it kind of a more tumultuous journey and how we can stay on a more paved, smooth road. So these are all things that contribute to making the road rough. And some of them are in our control and some of them are out of our control. And things that are out of our control, of course, is unfortunately the very real decline that comes with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia. The brain changes, the broken connections, the things that we need to learn to adjust to. Things in our control a little bit more are our perspective, our thoughts, and our feelings on what's happening. So getting educated, taking classes like this, realizing, what changes are happening, and good strategies we can kind of have in our toolbox, to use an overused term, that we can use in our communication. Of course, our approach. Anyone that's worked with people in dementia, I think, or has loved ones, can tell you that your body language, as we mentioned, your tone, has a very real effect on the person in front of us. If we come into a room kind of, heated up rather than feeling calm, that's going to, be reflected back to us. And that person, they will sense that we are agitated or anxious, and then they will likely become more agitated or anxious, and then we have an escalating type of situation, which is something that we want to stay away from as much as possible. We want to keep things calm. We want to keep things cool and collected. So as much as we can, taking a deep breath, kind of centering ourselves before going into that situation, especially if it's a situation that we think may become a little bit challenging. Our own health, of course, is maybe somewhat in our control, somewhat not. As caregivers and, older adults aging, we may have our own issues that we're dealing with too. And so, as much as possible, taking care of the things that we can control, getting good sleep, being able to practice some mindfulness, or hopefully, socialize with some friends or professional therapy, whatever it is, to kind of keep our mental health as good as can be. And those things are very important. And it's hard to find the time to do those. But I'd argue that a little time up front, taking care of some of that stuff, can save us some time and some heartache down the road. So
absolutely. So what makes it smoother, Melissa?
Yeah, so I touched on a little bit of this, but hopefully some understanding and compassion for the changes happening. Like you said, we can't see the changes happening, which I think is so hard, because we see the person. Like, I would see my mom, she looked young, even though she had these brain changes happening, and other people saw her and would think there's nothing wrong with her. She looks exactly the same. So it's hard not to communicate the way that we always have when physically the person looks the same to us, especially in those earlier moderate years. So just being able to have that understanding that, okay, they are having these changes. As you often say, Kim, they're not trying to give me a hard time, they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time, and just thinking, okay, how can I have compassion for this person, and compassion for myself? I'm going through something too. It's no small thing to be a caregiver. Thinking about what difficult situations may arise. Bath time was a big one for us, bathing, or if we had to go somewhere and she didn't want to go to a doctor's appointment or something like that. So thinking about those situations and doing some pre-planning, thinking about how, I can have that conversation, or have her be more meaningfully engaged in something she likes doing. Approaching her at a good time of day, not when she's kind of, in a stressful state. Building skills like education, going to support groups, hearing from other caregivers, tuning in, connecting, and of course, caring for yourself, which is easier said than done, but so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So another great quote, it's the way you talk to us, not what you say, that we will remember. We know the feeling, but we don't know the plot. Your smile, your laugh, and your touch are what we will connect to. So important. And approach the person with forgetfulness as if you're about to enter the unknown, sacred space. Communication is not only about content, it is also, sometimes most of all, about feelings. Fabulous quotes that really give us insight, coming from, these are words of people who are living with the illness. And then you do this one, Melissa, because it's your Dr. Power.
Yeah, I love this sentiment, this quote. Is it, we often think, well, he's confused because he has dementia. He does not making any sense. But if we flip that sentiment on its head and think, well, I'm confused actually, because I don't understand what he's trying to tell me. And I would add yet, hopefully, the more we learn that person's patterns, the more we, understand, maybe that what what they need, their needs, you know, we can get better about understanding what they're trying to tell us, because it makes perfect sense in their mind, what they're trying to say to us or what they're trying to communicate. We just have to kind of be a little bit of a detective and figure out, you know, what is underlying these words or these actions that I see, and how can I address those?
Absolutely. And validating someone's expression says it's your right to feel the way you do without judgment or blame. Absolutely. And really just, you know, as an exercise in empathy, just think about these questions. What happens when communication breaks down? How would you feel? You know, just think about how that feels. If you were talking to someone and they're looking at you like, I don't know what you're saying, what do you mean? And how would that make you feel? And then just kind of translate that to how do you think a person with dementia feels? How very frustrating that must be. And think about living that way every day. So, and keep in mind that, you know, most of the general public think that dementia is just about memory loss. They think it's just simply about forgetfulness. But the brain changes, you know, they may begin with short-term memory, but as it moves through the different areas of the brain, it affects language, communication, executive functions, visual spatial perception, and of course, mood and behavior. And so, you know, and at the heart of it all, you know, regardless of what stage people are in, they sort of live in a state of confusion. And I've always liked this simple continuum. And, you know, when I show it to families, they kind of get it. Because if you start at the left and realize that people actually live there in a state of confusion all the time, I mean, sure, some days are better than others, but if you put yourself in their shoes and if you think about what that would be like to be confused all the time, and think about how you feel when you're confused or upset, I mean, it's an uncomfortable place to be. And that, you know, when as human beings we're uncomfortable, we tend to then act out in some way. I mean, for most of us, it sort of turns into a meltdown, right? And so this is what's happening in the folks' world that we're caring for, you know, and this cycle can repeat itself like many times a day. But the good news is that with the tools that Melissa and I are talking about today, simple, tried and true tools, the validation, the reassurance, the accepting the blame, the redirection and distraction, you put those things into play, you can mitigate this cycle. You can stop it from happening. Maybe not 100% of the time, but, you know, really, if you could even prevent it from happening 50% of the time, that spells a better quality of life for your person or clients living with dementia and a better quality of life for you. So, you know, that's really the good news that we're delivering in this webinar today, that we can make a change, a powerful change in the lives of people living with this illness. Again, you know, using these tips and effective communication and remaining flexible can lead to prevention and reduction of a lot of the symptoms that we see in these illnesses. So that makes me hopeful. So, you know, a couple things to keep in mind. You have to understand that, you know, some things we can change, but there's a lot that we can't change. And we know we can't change them, but we can change. So that's kind of a circular statement. But, you know, I always think about that. Oh gosh, Melissa, what is it that that prayer they say? It's
Oh, the
sort of
serenity
the
prayer, like
serenity.
grant
Yeah,
me the, yeah, accept the
yeah.
things I cannot change, and yeah.
Yes, yes. I think that that should be the dementia prayer. And then also remember thoughts, beliefs, and actions significantly impact our behavior, and our behavior impacts their behavior. And all behavior has meaning. And really, Melissa and I object to the overuse of the word behavior because it implies, I don't know, that people are being bad, and they're not. I mean, they're expressions they're trying to it's communication. They're trying to communicate with us. And so now we know that we have to dig a little deep to find the trigger for that. And then it all kind of starts by laying this foundation of making good connections and communicating effectively. And making those connections is always more important than any task you set out to do. And that's a really important message. You know, as a caregiver, you get up and you've got this whole long list of things you want to accomplish every day, but their agenda is not always our agenda. And what's most important is making a good connection with them and making them feel validated, making them feel loved and supported, and helping them to feel like they are communicating and connecting with you. That's our task. And, you know, bringing joy to their days. And so that overrides, you know, some of the other typical tasks of the day. Okay, and I'm going to move quickly now, and we're not going to be able to do our role plays the way we had planned, but
That's all right. We'll
yep.
get through some of them.
Quickly, just talking about some of the benefits of the caring conversations. Obviously, they're going to foster more self-esteem, reduce frustration, strengthen people's independence, and enhance your relationship with them. All wonderful outcomes that we want to achieve. What are the steps? We want to check the environment, adjust our approach, facilitate a connection, and be a good listener. And I think we've talked about all of these things in one form or another throughout our discussion today, and focus on remaining skills. So I think we can go ahead and skip through this. Effective communication, the do's and don'ts. Again, the don'ts are reasoning, arguing and confronting, reminding, questioning recent memory and taking it personally. Instead, we're going to repeat, accept the blame, leave the room if necessary, but don't be gone too long. Agree, use distraction, and eliminate the word but. We can replace that with nevertheless, which is much more gracious. Melissa, let's do the one role play on reasoning, okay?
Okay.
And I think that will be a good way to end it, since we did kind of rush people through that one.
Great.
So what we'll do in this role play is we will, I'm going to ask Melissa to be the person with who's living with dementia, and she's going to make a statement, and then I'm going to do it I don't want to say the wrong way, a typical
what we sometimes do. Yeah.
I'll do it the typical way, and I might exaggerate a little bit, and then I'll do it the compassionate way. Okay.
Perfect. All
There's
right.
your
So
line,
obviously,
Melissa.
shower. I just took a shower. I told you. I told you I just took a shower.
What? You haven't showered for several days. If you don't shower often enough, you're going to get an infection. Now, those of you listening, do you think that's the most effective way to communicate? I'm just thinking probably not. So let's try. Let's try it a different way, Melissa. Let's try it using some of the things we talked about today. So go ahead and give your line again.
All right. Shower. I just took a shower. What are you talking about?
Well, today is our regular bath day. I'm sorry if I forgot to tell you. I'll tell you what, let's go get cleaned up, and then I'll make you a nice snack. So some of the things that I did there that may work, it's not always a perfect science, but I tried a short explanation. Today's our regular bath day. I tried accepting the blame. I'm sorry if I forgot to tell you. And then I used distraction. Well, let's go get cleaned up, and then I'll make you a nice snack. So that's just an example of, you know, sort of a typical way that we might do it. We might try reasoning with them. And if you say something like you haven't showered for several days, what's the answer going to be? Melissa, what would you say if I told you you hadn't showered for several days?
I'd say you're a liar.
You're a liar. I just took a shower an hour ago.
And I like what Tipa Snow has to say about it. We think, oh, they're trying to be difficult with us, they're lying to us, deliberately. But I love what she says. She says, oftentimes we can think about it as they have an old memory in a new place. So,
Yeah.
when we're used to taking showers, regularly our whole life, and then someone accuses us of not taking a shower, maybe they really do believe that they took a shower recently. That could be a possibility as well. So not to jump immediately to they're just trying to be deceitful with us. And it gives
Correct.
us a little bit of compassion.
Absolutely. All right. So in closing, Melissa and I would just like you to remind yourselves to try to always look for the smooth road. And that takes understanding and compassion. It takes a little bit of anticipating a difficult situation. It takes some skill building, tuning in and connecting. And it also means self-care, right, Melissa?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All true. All right, so we have a few minutes here. We'll obviously probably take about 10 minutes. 12:30 here for us on the West Coast. So if you do need to go at 12:30 and you're looking for those continuing education credits, as long as you've been online for 60 minutes, you're free to go. And you will get that survey emailed to you later if you don't stay on for the full time. So we already have some good questions. Feel free to keep sending those in. And again, we do record these and they're available after, so don't worry about missing out if you really need to go at 12:30. I want to thank our sponsors one more time, Irvine Clinical Research, Care Choices Hospice and Palliative Services, O'Connor Mortuary, and Caring Companions at Home. We couldn't do this without them. They're incredible community sponsors. And keep an eye out for the flyer for our next month's webinar on April 13th, which is going to be on keeping your brain healthy and lowering your risk of cognitive decline. So with that, let's see what good questions we have here. Some questions about the poll, which is fine. It doesn't matter what you answered. It's fine. And that last one was, could be a little bit debatable, I guess. So one person said, no, it's fine. They're not important. They're really just an attendance check.
Don't be mad at me.
No, you can't blame us. So one person here says they have a client at their care community, and he has delusions of one of the caregivers being his girlfriend. And the person asks, should we move him to a new place? Kim, I want to hear what you have to say. I would say a move sounds like a pretty drastic, first step. So what advice would you have for this person?
Yeah, definitely don't move him, because no matter what they do, it's not their fault. It's, you blame the illness, not the person. And moving someone can cause transfer trauma, and it can trigger a decline in the person with dementia. So definitely a move is out. And, it's not unusual for people to try to develop relationships with others in that way. He's seeking affection and seeking warmth. He might think that staff person is his wife, or he might he's confused. And so she has to learn to redirect him. And she probably shouldn't be the one doing personal care with him. Yeah. Someone else should be doing personal care with him. But you need to use the skills of deflecting and redirecting, but you shouldn't. Moving him would be punishing him for something that he's not responsible for.
Right. That can be, very, very disruptive, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay,
I understand it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I sympathize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So next question here. Some of our residents with Alzheimer's start counting numbers or repeating the same word on and on, which sometimes annoys the other residents. Caregiver tries to distract them, but they still continue. Do you have an idea of how to handle this situation? You want to jump in?
No, it's part of the illness, and so we have to accommodate. I mean, we kind of have to accommodate that. If you can put them in different areas of the house. Is it a group home? Melissa,
it sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like
it. If you can put them in different areas of the house. Some illnesses have obsessive compulsive behavior attached to them, like FTD or something like that. That might be the compulsive counter. If you can redirect the compulsive counter with some type of other activity, most people with dementia find it hard to do two things at the same time. That might help, but most quote unquote behaviors, unless they're a danger to the person, you have to sort of let them do them as long as they're safe, because it's really hard to stop them. I mean, I've seen people who constantly hum. I've seen people who constantly bang things, constantly move furniture. I mean, there's a lot of obsessiveness that happens, and there's not a lot you can do about that, except maybe just try to, put them in different areas of the house. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say, if it's not always happening constantly, pay attention to what's going on when they're not doing that. Are
Mhm.
they contently engaged in something else? Are they, in a different setting? Are they in a different situation? And how can we replicate that, during those more challenging times when they are, it's possible they're bored or they're anxious. How can what do they like to be engaged in that maybe they can hopefully do on their own if you're doing a group activity and you're not able to sit with them one-on-one.
Yeah.
So it is a tough,
Have
situation when you're
have
caring
you
for
tried,
multiple people.
right? Have you tried like putting a headset on him with music playing?
That's a
That
good,
might
yeah, right. Music,
distract him.
absolutely. Yeah, totally.
That might
Great.
be good.
Okay, here's another one. This is specifically for you, Kim. It says, question for
Okay.
Kim. What do you do when you really need to cut someone's hair, but they continue to refuse?
Why do you need to cut it?
Good question.
I mean, if it's really upsetting them, what can I guess I need more information. Will they let
Yeah,
you wash it? I mean,
yeah,
can
we
you
don't know. So, I mean,
can
I
you
guess
pull
we
it
could.
back in a ponytail?
Yeah, and we could maybe think about this in terms of other personal care tasks too. You need to, help someone bathe or do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they're refusing. And we will have a webinar in several months on this specific topic of resistance to care and how we can think about that. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about that, there are obviously a number of strategies and knowing the person well and hopefully figuring out why they're so opposed. Did they have a bad experience before? Could we do it in a different setting besides maybe the bathroom where, you might meet a little bit more resistance? Can we attach it to a positive activity? All these strategies that we could use for any type of situation like this. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think starting to think of is this really necessary is a great first step.
but you know what? I'd like to talk to that person more.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have the email.
could you email me? You can
Yeah,
email me at kim.bailey@alsoc.org. Can you put
yeah,
that in the?
yeah.
Yeah, because
And if
I need more information,
yeah,
so that we can talk about the environment and, whether or not you're giving them a mirror, or whether they can see what you're doing. Are you standing behind them? And I'd like to talk to you more about that.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of these questions are about specific situations that I think would do better with a conversation like that. So I just want to remind everyone, our helpline number is up here.
Yes.
Please call us. And it's so much better sometimes to just talk through this rather than us giving you some general suggestions of things that might work.
Hmm.
I think knowing that person well and having a conversation sometimes is much better than that. So let's see some other questions here. We have one question about how do you de-escalate a combative, confused resident. We talked a little bit about diffusing a volatile situation. Of course, number one, keeping yourself safe. Do you want to talk about anything else on that? I mean, again, this is a really big topic that we could spend a whole hour on for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, we need to know so much about this. We need to know what time of day it happens, what happened before the behavior, what is the behavior? Is it happening with a particular staff person? Um, I need so much more information. Does it say what the behavior is?
No, it doesn't say. But I think just in general, things that we've talked about are very important. And I would add one thing that
Is
sometimes
it a
people think,
medical problem? Is it
yeah, there's
physical?
not a lot of information,
What's
which
the
obviously will
trigger?
determine the response. But I think a good way to think about something like this is, we often think, oh, well, out of the blue, they were combative, or they all of a sudden got angry and it wasn't this outburst. And I like the way, again, Dr. Al Power talks about this as think about it rather as a tea kettle that's on a low heat all day and kind of heating up. And these little things that we might not notice all day, taking away choices, taking away control, the person, feeling maybe anxious or fearful. And then that can add up to that type of situation. So instead of thinking, well, in the moment, how can we stop this dangerous situation, which of course is important if it gets to that point, I think we need to step back and say, how can we prevent or reduce the risk of this happening throughout the day? How can we help this person be content, feel secure, feel loved and connected throughout the day? And if we are able to address those needs, which can be really difficult, of course, especially in a care community setting, I think we'll start to see those episodes decrease a lot. But of course, in the moment, knowing how to de-escalate a situation, keep yourself safe, maybe not having 10 people rush in, because that can obviously,
Yeah.
and that's a big one too, is limit the staff as much as possible. So there's a lot there, but please call our helpline. We can talk about it.
Yeah, I feel kind of helpless because
Yeah, it's tough to not know the
I need
details.
a lot more information for these individual issues, and I want to help.
Yeah, of course. So let's see here.
Sounds like we need to do a behavioral topic again.
Yeah, I think we're due for one of
Yeah.
that. So we have a few thank yous. Thank you so much. So here's one: suggestions for someone insisting they're not living in their own home. They're convinced someone's stealing from them. So it's kind of, again, things that we've talked about, but anything you want to reiterate here?
Yeah, my person who I cared for didn't think she was in her own home, which was so sad because that was the whole goal of me living there, was so that she wouldn't go to a care community and that she could live in her own home. But then at the end stage in the last few years, she didn't recognize it at her home as her own home. But what does it mean to be in your own home? It means you're safe and secure and loved. So I tried to create the feeling of home, and just make sure she wasn't scared, I think is the thing. I mean, we talked about wanting to go home and the fact that that's not a physical place, but really an emotional state. And so when they say these things about wanting, I'm not in my own home, recognize they're terrified. And so, again, validating them and saying, oh, that must be so scary. I want to help you with that. And, it's too late to drive around now. We'll do that in the morning, but right now let's get a blanket on you and let's settle down for the night, or let me get you some hot chocolate. Anything you can do, just put yourself in their shoes and think about how terrifying that is, and address this from an emotional standpoint. What was the other example? Living in
I don't know. Sorry.
something about someone was trying to hurt them.
Stealing from them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's safety. I'm here. I'm not going to let anybody hurt you. People will have delusions that someone's trying to get in the house. There's someone in the room with them. Look under the bed and say, oh, they're not here now, and I won't let them come back. Again, the worst thing you can do is say, you're imagining that, or there's no one here. You're wrong. The thing to say is, I'm here. I'm looking. I'm keeping this area safe for you. I'm going to lay on the bed with you, and I'm not going to let anybody in here. By gosh, you're safe now. Just validating people and assuring them that as you're on the job and you're not going to let anything happen to them. Nothing is going to happen to you. I'm here.
Yeah, I think we often think about it in terms of, it's us versus them, and how do we get them to calm down? But I think we need to switch to, it's them and me versus the problem, and be on their side, be on their team, and they can sense that for sure. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they are losing the lights are going off in their brain. They are losing control. It's a terrifying feeling, and you know, I can't even get I can't even begin to understand what that feels like. So you just do everything you can to make that person feel safe.
Absolutely.
Physically, emotionally, just be a barrier for them. Just, just keep
Totally.
them safe. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have lots of other questions. I would encourage you all to give our helpline a call, please. We would love to hear from you. And again, these situations are so much better addressed when we can talk through it. Lots of similar questions on the same theme. One question I do want to address is how do we access the recording? And it will be available on our website in about a week. It's also on our YouTube page. If you go to YouTube and type in Alzheimer's Orange County, you can see all of our recorded presentations. And if you have any questions about that, please, again, call our helpline, check out our website. Thank you so much for being with us today. I had such a great time with you, Kim. I really enjoyed our conversation. And Kim and I do this regularly on our Facebook Lives on Tuesdays. If you go over to facebook.com/ALZOC, we have many other Zoom classes and other classes on a lot of these topics. So we really appreciate your question. I'm really sorry if we didn't get to it today, but again, please do reach out to us. We do want to connect with you. That's what we want to do the most. So thank you so much. And please do complete that survey if you're still with us. I know a lot of people had to leave, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you all. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. And thanks again to all of our wonderful sponsors. We just appreciate you so much and the ability to be able to do this month after month.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next
Thanks,
time. Thank you so
Melissa,
much.
for joining me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.